Hello everybody, I'm your ghost with the most and your fabulous host Luke here, and I just finished watching all 6 seasons of Lost. The first 3 seasons are really good, and the latter 3 seasons, well, not bad or not nearly as good as the first 3, but the show does have a very good series finale, even if I am a bit confused about some things. Now, a good amount of characters die in Lost, which makes sense for the type of show it is, and most of the deaths in the show are done pretty well. But there are 3 deaths in particular that I did not like and felt like real slaps to the face. So let's talk about them. Before we start though, look at this beautiful art my friend, who is a fish, made for me. It's beautiful. I want to marry it. So a link to his channel is in the description for you if you're curious about what he makes. Anyway, now let's talk about the deaths. Nikki and Paulo in Season 3, Episode 14, Expose. Are you kidding me? They introduced new survivors for the first time in like 2 seasons, and then after 7 episodes after their introduction, they were immediately killed off. It's so stupid. We barely even got to know them before they died. A Medusa spider bit them, and turns out they weren't dead, and they were just paralyzed, but then they actually did die because they were buried alive by the other survivors because they thought they were dead, which is dark, but I still don't understand what the point of it was. What was the point of introducing these new characters, barely doing anything with them, and then the second we learn more about them, they die? I did kind of call them not being dead. The foreshadowing was the dog Vincent, who kept pulling the blanket off their quote-unquote dead bodies. I get the ending was supposed to be dark, and that was the whole point, but it just feels weird to do it with these characters they just introduced. It just kind of feels like a waste. I would have rather them woken up right before they were buried alive so they could have done more. Turns out the reason Nikki and Paulo were added in the first place was because people were also questioning why there are 40 survivors but we only ever focus on like the same 10. That's the entire reason they were put in the show in the first place. But for whatever reason, audiences didn't like them. They thought they were quote-unquote crashing the party that the main characters were having, which is really fucking stupid for multiple reasons. 1, they barely even did anything. The only thing they ever really did before they died was be in the hatch with Locke before Echo died, and then after that they had a few lines in the ping pong episode, and that was about it. They had very little screen time and lines before they died. They barely did anything, so I have no idea why people were so angry with them. It just feels like audiences threw a hissy fit because they took a little screen time away from already pre-established characters that they liked. I also saw a lot of people comparing them to Boone and Shannon, which to be fair, I did kind of see at first, but after seeing their backstory and learning about their personalities, they're completely different characters. 2, the entire reason these characters were introduced in the first place was because people were complaining there are 40 survivors of the crash, but we only ever focus on like the same 10 or so. And this is a very valid complaint, and it's a complaint I share. It's one of my biggest complaints with the show. It's really distracting how there are so many survivors, but we only ever focus on the same 10. It's so bad that there could literally be an entire spin-off show about the other survivors we just never see or interact with. In Season 4, this mercenary kills 3 random background survivors, and it's honestly kind of comical.
Get back inside and wait until... Get back inside! Get inside!
That long aside, that's why I was so happy when these new characters were introduced. The writers did what the people wanted, and they introduced new characters, and then people didn't like that, even though that's what they asked for. So then the writers quickly killed them off before they even had a chance to do anything. It's really stupid. I feel like this is one of those scenarios where the writers really shouldn't have listened to audience feedback, or at least listened so soon. Listening to audience feedback as a writer is very important. But, like I said before, sometimes audiences are just really stupid. There was nothing to complain about when it came to these characters. People were just being morons. Audiences are like that sometimes. The writers should have let them develop first and then see if people still didn't like them, and then killed them off if people still didn't. You shouldn't kill off characters before they have time to develop and expand if the potential is there. Their death is very dark, but dark doesn't mean good. The episode they're killed is the episode we finally learn their backstory, and their backstory is really interesting. They're criminals who stole diamonds and stuff, and they kill people. There's a lot of potential there that the writers just don't use. There's so much they could have done with them, but they just didn't because they killed them off in the same episode we finally learned about them. It just screams missed potential, and it's a waste of characters. Paulo and Nikki's deaths also don't even make sense. Paulo was bitten by the spider about 2 minutes and 20 seconds before Nikki was. It took about that amount of time for the spider's venom to fully take effect and for him to go into paralysis, and keep in mind he was bitten on the neck, which means he would go into paralysis extra fast. Right after it bit Nikki, who immediately ran to the beach where Sawyer and Hugo found her. It takes about 20 seconds for her to get to the beach, and then 10 more seconds before she finally goes into paralysis. Paula was able to talk just fine for about a minute after being bit by the spider, but Nikki struggles to talk, even though she was just bit, and she was bitten on her leg, which means the venom should take longer to take effect. But then, at the end of the episode, Nikki wakes up right as they're being buried alive, but she isn't able to do anything to stop them because she's still paralyzed. But Paulo was bitten before her, so he should have woken up, and if he had woken up before her, they would still be alive. You could argue that it could take longer than 20 seconds for Nikki to get to the beach, and that they just didn't show Nikki running to the beach for all that time, but Paulo still should have woken up before her. So yeah, their deaths don't even make any sense. Also, I went back to the episode and rewatched these scenes and timed them with a stopwatch, so these numbers are almost exact. Also, apparently the spiders in the episode were the man in black, but I'm not entirely sure how that works. But anyway, I hate the people that were watching Lost 16 years ago. I was reading the wiki for Expose, and they were originally supposed to have a lot more gags, and they're really funny, but they didn't happen because the audiences complained, so they were killed off. I don't know who to be more annoyed at, the fans 16 years ago that threw a hissy fit over two characters who barely had any screen time, or the writers for listening to those fans before they did anything with those characters. The pair were originally supposed to have more gags too, things like them finding Shannon's inhaler and disregarding it and other stuff like that. Those gags would have been really funny and cool, but they were just never in the show. Originally, this video was just going to be about Nikki and Paulo and how annoyed I was about their deaths, but there is another character death that I'm also pretty miffed at. One of the other characters I want to talk about is Shannon, and how I feel like they killed her off way too early. It really felt like they were going to do a lot with her in Season 2. She kept having visions of Walt, and she was put in charge of Vincent at the end of Season 1. And she started to have a lot more character development in Season 2. It felt like the writers were finally going to start doing more with her, as she really didn't do a whole lot in the first season, besides hold Locke at gunpoint. But they decided to kill her off. It just feels like a waste of potential. I hate it when shows decide to kill off characters right when they start to do important stuff and have character development. If they were gonna kill off Shannon, they should have done it at the end of Season 2 and not the beginning. She really didn't do that much in Season 1, which is why I was happy to see at the beginning of Season 2 it looked like she was gonna be taking on a lot more of a major role, but then she got shot by Ana Lucia. It just feels like a waste. If they wanted to kill somebody off so early in Season 2, they should have killed off Charlie. Now, this is biased because, quite frankly, I hate Charlie, and I think he is the worst of all the main characters by far, but I don't care. I liked Charlie at first. I thought him overcoming his drug addictions was interesting, but then all he did was start obsessing over Claire and her baby, and it just became really creepy. And I was so happy when they finally killed him off in Season 3, but I honestly wish they killed him off so much sooner. I looked at a video about, a bunch of Lost characters dying, and, all of the comments were just people mourning Charlie's death, and I'm like, how? He was so creepy. How do you care about him? He was awful. Charlie should have died at the beginning of Season 2, and Shannon should have lived. Shannon had so much potential to grow and become a much more interesting character, whereas Charlie only got creepier and creepier as the show went on, and it feels like he should have died much sooner than he did. I'm sorry if there are any Charlie stans watching this video, but I don't care. Charlie sucks ass. I would rather go to a horrible comedy show than see Charlie ever again.
Would you like to hear a joke? Women's rights.
Really quickly, I want to talk about the series finale. I'm glad Shannon was in the finale, but she really didn't do much, which I was disappointed about. She only has 2 lines, and one of them is just saying Saeed's name. I also feel like there was missed potential for some jokes. Boone and Shannon were the first main characters to die, and they died well before, the Man in Black and the others, and all that jazz became, a really big thing. So it'd be kind of funny to see their reactions to other characters telling them about all that stuff, but oh well. I am at least glad she appeared in the finale at all. However, Nikki and Paulo don't appear in season 6 at all, which feels like a missed potential. I feel like it would have been kind of interesting to see what they did with their diamonds if the plane didn't crash. They are at least mentioned in the season, however, so I guess I have to take what I can get. Lost is a really good show, but it did these 3 characters hella dirty, and they deserved much better. I'm fine with killing off main characters, but it has to be done in the right way. Don't kill off characters that still have so much potential to grow and so much story potential as well. It just feels like a waste. And all you can think about is what could have been. Well, anyway, I have been your Ghost with the Most and your fabulous host, and thank you for watching.